What's up YouTube, and welcome to another tutorial where today we've got this really nice autumn themed design. There's links down below to everything you're going to need to check out all the requirements in there. And if you didn't already know, I post 3 more exclusive tutorials over on my Patreon. There's a link in the description down below where you can go ahead and see every design that you unlock when you become a Patreon support. So hit the link in the description down below and come and show your support. And with all that said, let's get started. So once you've got your canvas, the first thing we're going to want to go ahead and do with the empty layer that we have straight away, we're going to go up to our brush library and you're going to need to find the leaf stamp that I've put in the description down below. Now the size is maxed out and the color doesn't really matter for now. Mine is currently set to black, but we're going to make sure we tap in the center of the screen to make sure there's no cut-offs on either side. And then we're going to grab our cursor. And if you make sure snapping is turned on in the bottom left hand corner, we can position our leaf nicely in the center of our design. Now if you take a look, the actual center point is actually slightly off. So I'm just going to use that sort of line. I know it's a little gap there. I'm just going to move it across until sort of the top of the leaf is more towards the center. So it's kind of up to you where you want to place it, but something like that is good for positioning. So we're going to use this as a cookie cutter kind of shape. So we're going to go up to our layers and we're going to create a new layer. If we then tap on the leaf layer and tap on it and use the option of select, make sure color fill is grayed out so it's turned off. You've now selected the shape, but I want to select everything but the shape. So I'm just going to go to invert, which will invert my selection. And then I'm going to go to my colors and I'm going to grab this color here in the top left of the palette. And then if we go back to our layers and go to the empty layer, we've still got our selection in place. If we tap on it and use the option of fill, it'll fill everything in except for the center. So if we go to that leaf layer, the dark one, and swipe it to the left and delete it, we've got rid of it, and now we've got our shape we can draw within the center of. If we create a new layer then and drag it underneath, let's start layering out some of the different steps for this design. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the second color on the top row now. We're going to go to our brush library and we're going to go ahead, and for now I'm just going to use calligraphy and the monoline option. The brush size doesn't really matter too much, so we're just going to draw in a curve from edge to edge, just a very light sort of curve. It doesn't need to be super accurate, something a bit like this. And if you make sure you go edge to edge, you'll be able to drag and drop your colour into the bottom area, which will be your ground. Let's then lay out the rest of it, so let's continue to go to our layers and create a new layer. And I'm going to go to my colours and I'm going to grab this colour here, the bottom left colour in the palette. And if we go to our brush library, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to use the script brush. If I tap on the script brush, you will see under stabilization, I have a little bit of streamline on there and a little bit of stabilization if you want to match to mine. And I'm going to hit done. And so what we're going to do is we're going to draw in 2 trees on either side. So the first tree is going to start somewhat here, and we're just going to draw in the trunk that's going to say run to here. And if you're interested in the brush size, it's currently set to 14%. We're then going to draw in another tree that's, well, the other half, should I say, of the tree. So just here, I'm going to thicken that up a little bit. And if I make sure I join up my points at the very bottom, and make sure that's not somewhat straight, you kind of want it a little bit sort of wobbly, and points out on either side. And if you link up your shape at the top, you'll be able to drag and drop your color in. Now that's your trunk in place. We can now start to branch out quite literally and create the branches for the tree. So for here, for example, I'm going to try and run a point out. Now I want it to try and run into this point here on the top left of this little point here. So I'm just going to run in a line and put a bit more pressure down as it gets closer to the trunk. And then from there, we can create other little avenues where the branches are going to start to wander out in different directions. So we can create very nice sort of thin ones that run off. We can maybe even have one go off from here, but you always want to make sure it's thicker towards sort of the main branch here, so something a little bit closer to this. What we can then do is then on the left hand side, I want to also just let it run out and a bit more upwards towards the top area. So I'm going to press with a bit of sort of pressure and just let that just taper off as I get towards the top. And then from there, I'm going to introduce a branch that maybe runs in from here, and then another one that just runs off, and we're just creating lots of little branches off of certain points, and we're just going to thicken them up towards the bases of them. So again, where they come off of the tree, you just want that to be the thickest point and just let the rest just run off from there. And maybe I'll add in another one here just to sort of fill that out a little bit. Now we're not going too far to the right because we're adding in another tree. This is technically out of the two. We're going to add in another one over here that's going to sit in front of this. But for now, we're going to go back to our layers and create a new layer and drag it underneath that layer. We're then going to go to our colours, and for a moment we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this yellow here, so it's the 5th colour on the top row. And we're going to create a very loose shape for the leaves. So starting say here, I'm just going to sort of just create a nice wobbly shape, go all the way around and link up to the beginning, and then drag and drop the colour in. We will come back to this shortly and add in more colour, so we're just blocking out the shapes for now. Let's do the same on the right hand side. So we're going to go to our layers and we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to drag it above the tree we were just creating. We're going to go to our colours and switch it back to the colour in the bottom left of the palette. Now this tree just needs to sit a little bit lower than this one, so you might want to start it say here for example, and we're just going to let that base of the tree run up to here. I like random little sort of bumps and lumps in the actual sort of trunk of the tree. It adds a little bit more character. So this one here is going to have a little bit more of a little sort of bumpy lumpy look, and I can drag and drop the colour in if I've linked it up correctly, which is a little gap there, so we can drag and drop the colour into there. And again, let's create some more branches. So again, we've got this point here on the right hand side. We can, start to go off from there and let that run into that point there. Maybe from here we just have another one that just runs off into this point, and it's kind of the sort of stems or the main sort of spines of the actual leaf itself. Let's then also run off some lines up into the very top here and create some nice thicker parts towards the base. Again, just let this run off to the right, again thickening that up a little bit more. And maybe the odd one that just runs off here. Now don't worry about your overlap here, because once you've done this now, we're then going to go back to our layers and create another new layer and drag it underneath the layer we were just working on. Go back to your colours and grab the yellow again, the 5th colour on the top row, and create that same nice wobbly look. So we're just going to come down here, go around the base there and go all the way back around to my starting point. And if I drag and drop the colour in, you'll see that the tree in behind now disappears because they're now nicely layered back in the background there. So now let's carry on and flush out the rest of the design. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in the mid-ground trees. So we're going to go to our layers, and if we go down to the ground layer that we created, the green one, and create a new layer, we need to drag that underneath. And then if we go to our colours, we need to grab the bottom colour in the 2nd column. Same brush, same sort of actions. We're going to create a nice base of our tree. Now you do need to kind of just let it run all the way up to the top. Now one thing I kind of recommend is if you go to your layers and for a moment let's turn off the yellow blobs, we'll then be able to see the tree that we're drawing in the background. That's just so we can get an idea for all the branches we're going to add in, because once we start to mask out certain areas of the leaves at the top, we're going to be left with everything that sits underneath. So we need to be able to see it just to make sure it's nice and accurate and still looks nice. So I'm going to run a couple of little branches up into these points again, trying to sort of link up a little bit to the sort of the spines of what would be the leaf. So just a couple of branches here and there that just run off from there. Another one that runs off into here. A little bump's fine. And we'll add one there too. And then we're going to add 2 trees on either side over on the corners here. So we're going to create another little tree. And so you can make them nice and quick and easy. We're not spending too much time on them, and because they're quite small we can just fill them in quite easily. But again, just let that branch run up into the corner. I'm going to create another one that just runs off from there. And that's all I'm going to do on that side. Potentially I'll just thicken that out towards the base a little bit more. And then the same on the left hand side. We're going to create another tree. So another tree up like this. Link them up at the bottom. Link them up at the top, so we can drag and drop the colour in. And from there, let's just run a branch off there too. And maybe one that runs off here, like so. Maybe even just one that runs off, just to differentiate this one from the other side a little bit more. So we've got our trees in place. We can then go to our layers and let's create another new layer and drag that down towards the very bottom. The same process applies. We're going to go to our colours, and this colour here, the top of the 4th column, and this is going to act as our leaves for the background. So I'm going to start over here and just create a nice, again, wobbly kind of shape and go all the way around, linking up my line so I can drag and drop the colour in. So there we go, our trees have got some nice coverage there in the background like so. Then the final step is to just go into the background. We're going to create a new layer again and go down. We're going to go to our colours. We're going to create some trees that just sit in the background. Now these do not need to be very detailed at all. We're just going to grab the third colour at the bottom of the third column, and we're going to draw in some lines that are just going to sit in the background. So my brush size is still, just as a reminder, 14%. I'm just going to run some thin lines, some nice thick lines. They don't have to all be from the bottom either. They can be a little bit further back like this, and you can continue just to create some nice trees in the background. Now these are just really far away, and that's why we're not adding too much to them. We're just adding in some nice lines that we're going to blur out eventually. So right now it looks like a barcode, but I promise you it's going to look quite cool once we add in all the little effects. So I'm just drawing in some lines there, and I'll leave it exactly like that. So again, we're getting all the fundamentals, so bear with me, trust the process. We're going to go to our layers now, and we're going to create another new layer, drag it right down to the bottom, and this is where we're going to start to introduce the correct colours. What are we going to do for this? We're going to go to our colours. Let's first of all grab the fifth colour on the top row, so this nice yellow. We're then going to go to our brushes, and we're going to go down towards the bottom, and under organic we're going to use this brush here. It's the Snow Gum, and the brush size is currently maxed out about 8. Let's put it about 80%. And all we want to do now is just add in some colour that's just going to be splashed in the background. So just go left to right, cover the whole screen till you end up with a little sort of colour like that, and then reduce your brush size down to say about 30%. So all I did there was just coat the whole screen. And I'm going to go to my colours, and I'm going to grab this orange here, the third colour from the right up here. I'm going to just sort of gloss in some extra tones, not too much, just a few. And then I'm also going to go to my colours, and I'm going to grab this colour here in the top right, this nice red. And again, just add in a tiny amount of this red here, so just a couple of splashes. And then what we're going to do is go to our adjustments. We're going to blur it out. So we're going to go to Gauge Blur, swipe from left to right, and we'll end up with some nice colours there in the background. So something about sort of 10% looks pretty good. You can maybe go a bit lower, but I recommend about 8 to 10. So I'm going to go 9 in the middle. Tap on my adjustments when I'm done. We're then also going to do the same with the trees. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go to the lines that we put in the background. We're going to go to our adjustments, Gauge and Blur, and we're going to swipe from left to right, and we just need to blur these out so they're barely visible. So something around about sort of 6% will do the trick, something a little bit like this. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. And we're working from back to front now, as you can tell, to do all the rest of the design. So if we go to our layers, we've then got this layer here, which is the background bits of tree. So the first thing to do is add some color to this. So let's tap on the layer and let's alpha lock it. If we go to our colors, we're going to primarily work in this area, and we're going to get sort of more red and orange colors as we get closer on the closer trees. So for a minute, we're going to be using sort of the middle area. So I'm going to grab this color here, and feel free to experiment if you want to, but I'm going to grab the fifth color on the top row. We're then going to go to our brush, make sure it's still the Snow Gum, and it is. I'm going to reduce the brush size down to about 12%, and let's make that 12. And then I'm going to go ahead and just start running in some colour from left to right. With this brush, by the way, if you press really hard, you're going to get really big leaves. So just sort of keep your pressure nice and consistent. And we're just going to give it one big nice coat, leaving in some of the original base colour. We're then going to go to our colours, and we're going to grab let's grab this colour here, the fourth colour from the top right. So there we go. And we're going to brush in some more of this. So I'm pressing a bit firmer this time, just to add in some bigger sort of orangey areas, and towards the top as well. And I think we'll go up one more shade, so the third colour from the right, and we'll just splash in a little bit more so we get a little bit more of that red tone in there. You can see a little bit more like this, and there we go. We've actually done that layer now. But the cool thing, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the layer, and we're going to tap on it, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to mask it. So we're going to add a mask. Now a mask, if you don't already know, is a way of basically being able to show and hide depending on what color you paint on the mask. Now the mask, if it's white, everything underneath it is being revealed. So because the whole mask is white, we're seeing it. And if I tap on the mask and invert it to black, you can't see it because black hides and white reveals. So if we tap on that layer and invert that back, my color now needs to be set to black. And we're going to use the same brush that we're using to add in all the cool colors, but to mask out the edges. So I'm very lightly now just going to just gloss over the edges here to erase a really nice random sort of texture with this leaf brush. You can maybe even make it a bit smaller, about sort of 5% if you wish, but just start erasing, going across the whole design from left to right, and then you'll be left with some really nice random cutouts, some nice sort of detail there in the background, a nice bit of texture. What we then also want to do is go to our layers and go up a layer, which is going to be the tree trunks. We're going to tap on that layer and we're going to go ahead and add a mask to that too. We want to make sure we're on the mask and the colour is set to black still. And then just towards the edge of the branches, the very tips of them, we're going to just run our pen over the top of it to show that there's some leaves sitting in front of our little branches there, and it nicely fades off into all the leaves. We'll do the same down here in the bottom left, likewise just above the trunk a little bit as well, the main trunk. And you can see, look how cool that looks, it just sort of runs off into the leaves above. And really nicely added in, nice and random because of our little brush. What we then want to do is go to our layers. We're going to go ahead and what's the next one? It's the ground. So we're going to add in some cool colors on here. First of all, we're going to tap on this green layer and we're going to alpha lock it so we can paint within it only. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to add in a nice mix of color on the floor here. So I'm going to grab first of all the fifth color on that top row, this yellow, and my brush size, I'm going to make it 10%. I'm just going to gloss from left to right, adding in a really quick coat of color. And then I'm going to go to my colors again and I'm going to move across one more color, so the sixth color there, and again just add in some more of this but a little bit lighter tone towards the top in terms of pressure so that we get some nice small leaves back there. Now what we're then also going to do is, while it's still alpha locked, we're going to go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we're going to swipe from left to right. We're going to use this as a sort of a backdrop of splash of color of sort. So if you blur it up to 6% and then tap on your adjustments when you're done. And now we're going to go ahead and add in a layer where all the leaves are going to sit on top of this blur. So we're going to go ahead and go to our layers and we need to add this just towards the top. So we're going to go right to the top in front of our tree trunks, but not in front of the frame that we added right at the top here. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to my colors and I'm going to grab this color here, the fourth color from the right, because we're going to start getting into some of the more warmer tones. So I'm very lightly just going to start to brush over the base of the tree where all the leaves are falling down, and then also towards the back. Now you don't want to go too far back, but you do want to just make it nice and random. So I'm just going to sort of gloss from left to right, trying to add in a nice sort of blanket of leaves. And we're going to layer on top a few different colors. And as you get closer, just press a little bit firmer with your pressure, just so that your leaves are a little bit bigger as they get closer to the camera and the user. So something a bit like this. We're going to go back here too, add in some leaves, and you kind of want to avoid a few of them dropping in front of the tree, but if they do, it's not a problem. But if you're sort of don't want too many like there, just grab your eraser and tap on it. Make sure you got the monoline brush and just sort of cut them back a little bit so they're not sitting and impeding too much in front of your tree. Now already you've got like sort of the fixed main detail on top of here, and you've got your nice splash of colour in the background. But we're nowhere near done, we've got to add a lot more colour into here. So using the brush again and the colours, let's just continue to move up. So let's grab the third colour from the right. This should start to give us slowly a little bit more red tones. I'm going to add in some nice big leaves down here, but I also want to add in some nice splashes of colour right around the base of the tree. So just here, for example, I'm just going to start to paste in some nice leaves. And then in the back, we can also add in some red too, but I'm pressing a lot lighter as I get further back. And I'm trying not to just cover and coat. I'm trying to make sure that around the base of the trees here, we've got more of the redder tones, and in between is kind of the ground and the grass. But towards the distance there, you can give it a nice light coat from left to right. If you get the odd stray again, just grab your brush and just tone it down a little bit. Let's then go back to the brush, go to our colours. I'm going to jump straight to the far right colour, top right colour, and we're going to use this to add in some really nice burnt red leaves down here. So I'm pressing quite firm just in front of us here. We've got some nice leaves, almost as if we were on the ground looking through at this scene. Nice red leaves. Also nicely frame the bottom area here of our sort of leaf little stencil there that's holding this whole design together. And then let's just paint in some nice red leaves on top of our little mounds that we've created, and you can literally mound it up just at the base of the tree. We're going to do the same over here too. So just round the base there. And push the reds very lightly with your pressure out towards the right, and then as you get a bit closer towards the tree, press a little bit firmer, bulk it out, create some nice piles just around the base. And you can clearly see there that then the leaves are falling straight down and prioritizing sort of them landing around the base of the tree. A little bit of color. We can add the odd little splash back here, but not too much. Just the odd little bit just to break up the ground, give it that nice random look. Until you end up with something like this. I can then add in the tiniest bit over here too, but we're adding in those nice piles on the ground. So I'm really pleased with how that looks. We can then nicely now move on to the next layer. So if we go to our layers and go back to where we were, the next layer is the leaves that I believe are on the left hand side. So it's the big blob. So turn that big blob on the left hand side, and let's repeat kind of the similar steps we've already done up until this point. So let's tap on the layer and let's alpha lock it. We can then paint within it, so we're going to add in some really nice warm tones. So we're going to grab the fourth colour from the right, this one here. I'm going to press really firm and first of all give it a nice big scattering of colour, like so. And then a little bit of lighter pressure here and there, just adding some extra little bits of colour. We're then going to go to our colours again, and we're going to grab the second colour from the right. That's warm tone. This is really going to add in some nice reds and oranges. And let's push this all the way up towards the top, giving it a nice coat. And then just like before, we're going to go to our colours and grab the top right colour and start splashing in some of this beautiful red. This is my favourite red. When you layer it right on top out of all of it, it looks fantastic. Got this nice bit of colour. And don't be afraid just to put some towards the edges, because we're going to add in a nice shadow later on as well, which will emphasise those darker areas. So nice little bit of colour. And if you want to, you can go to your colours and then revert back to a sort of lighter tone, maybe say this colour here, the third colour on the top row, and just add in some lighter ones on top maybe. You could even go lighter than that actually. Let's go down to the fifth colour from the right and add in the odd little splash of the lighter tones just on top, just the tiniest bit. Cool, so let's go back to our layer, let's tap on it and let's mask it. Make sure we're on the mask and not the layer. Our colour should be set to black. And we can start erasing from the edge again. So we're just going to start erasing around the bottom area of our tree. And this is what I mentioned before. Once we start to erase into here, we're going to reveal the trunk that's going to sit underneath. So I'm going to get rid of quite a bit over here. I want to start to really bring that tree in a little bit that's sitting in the background there. So mine's going to kind of run up here and then just run off towards this top right corner. Bearing in mind there's going to be a big set of tree here on the right as well. So that's going to be more dominant in terms of the whole scene. And if you want to, you can sort of follow where your trunks were and branches were for the other one in the background. Just reveal them in the background a little bit more. Now if you end up with sort of little bits of extra residue here, just sort of left over, just erase a few times and you'll be able to sort of chop away at it. Let's go around the base here. I'm going to start quite light so we end up with some nice small petals that are cut out, and then we can get back into it and start to erase and erase and erase, just to give that nice random edge to it. That's what I really want. I'm going to reduce the brush size down to say 3% and just get rid of a bit more there with a bit more pressure. So there's one tree done. The same thing applies that we need to do as before. We need to go to the layer and we need to go ahead and go to its branches layer, tap on that and mask it. On the mask for that, repeat the same steps. So as you get closer towards the edges, just start to run your brush over the top, still 10%, just running that off, and look at that, curls out here, disappears. Lovely, lovely little bit of sort of masking there. And let's continue all the way up, so right up towards the top. We don't want to see any of these branches really up here. We want that to all be nice sort of leaf area. So let's just erase this like so. And this one here is looking a little bit too dominating, so I'm just going to chop into there a little bit more. And I think that looks pretty good to me. Pretty happy with that. So let's go to our layers, and what's the layer we're working on currently? Well, it's still the tree. Now there is a couple of things we just need to add to this. Let's tap on the layer and let's alpha lock it. So the layer, not the mask. You want to be on the layer part now. Then go to your colors and grab this color here. So it's the second color down in the far right column. We're going to go to our brush library And under elements, we're going to use this hard rain. Now I just want to use this just to add in like some very sort of light bark kind of colour. Now my brush size is 16%. I'm just going to run this up and down the tree just to add a few bits. So follow the direction of your lines and like so. And it was just, again, just to add in a little bit of sort of definition on it, just a little something. And you can maybe even reduce the brush size down to say 2% and maybe really darken it up in this area here, and especially towards the base. Just sort of run up and down that a little bit more like so. So it kind of got a nice shadow side because we are going to add in a light source shortly. And you can continue to do that further up. I've got it down to 1% now. And just going to sort of darken up the underside of a few of these branches here. Just a little bit more. There we go. So we've done this area now. We can move on to the one on the right. So if we go to our layers and go up a layer, we've got the next yellow blob. So this was it once we turn it back on. And we repeat the same steps, except this one here is going to be a little bit warmer and a bit darker. So we're going to maybe use a couple of these darker tones here. So the first step again is to tap on the layer and alpha lock it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to let's grab the third color from the right to start with. And our brush, we just need to switch it back. So we're going to go down to organic and the snow gum. And just like before, we're going to give a big nice quick coat over. And then we're going to move to the next set of colors. So we were on this one here. We're going to move, let's move across one. So the second color from the right, brushing in some nice bits of color here. Adding in lots of nice little different tones to each other. Move straight across then to the third color on the top row. Add in these nice dark tones. Going to really add in so many sort of warm tones in this. It's going to look really nice, really smart. Let's then move to the color just down below from it, and let's just see if we can get a little bit of this in. This is going to be relatively dark, so maybe just focus your darker areas just towards the top a little bit more, and maybe somewhat define this sort of leafy area towards the top. So let's just, what I mean by that is sort of get into these corners here, a little bit of color on top there. And I want this one to be darker so it nicely stands out from the one just beside it. So we're just going to darken a few of that up. And then when we're done, we go to our layer, we tap on it, and again we add a mask. We make sure we're on the mask and color is set to black. Same brush, same principles. We can just very lightly erase from the base around that defined edge. We can push this way further up if we want to reveal a little bit more of this tree here. So I'm going to do exactly that. We can then erase from here too, and again I'm going to reveal that middle tree again. So let's just continue just to run over this. I've got quite light pressure at the minute. Run around here and up into here. Now up here is looking a bit sort of clustered at the minute, but we're going to do something in a second that will just separate the two layers from each other a little bit. And then on this one, I'm just going to get rid of the odd little bit of residue by tapping on my eraser and going to airbrushing in the soft brush, making it about sort of 10%, if not smaller. Let's go about sort of 5. And I'm just going to gloss over this sort of area here just to get rid of it a little bit more. But overall, let's go back to our brush a second, making sure we're still on the mask. And I'm just going to continue just to refine this shape a little bit more. Maybe the odd little cutout here and there just to reveal the tree in behind. Likewise up here too. And then when you're happy, we're going to go to our layers and we're going to go up a layer to the tree and repeat the same steps as we did before. We tap on the layer and we mask it. We are then going to make sure we're on the mask and black is selected, and again towards the edge of the branches, let's just erase over the top of them. And the beauty with a mask is if you make a mistake that you don't like, just change your color back to white by double tapping in the top left hand corner and paint back over it and it will reveal it. And that's the beauty with using a mask, is your changes are never permanent. So I've gone back in with black and I'm going to erase over the top, get rid of a little bit up here. I want this main branch to be nice and sort of dominating though. A little bit more like this. That's looking nice to me, that's looking good. And then let's go back to the layer. We're going to go down to the layer part of it and tap on it and we're going to mask it. So we're going to tap on it and we're going to alpha lock it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here on the far right, so the second color down. And we're going to go to our brush library and again we're going to switch it back to the brush that we had just before. So under elements it's the hard rain. And we're going to darken up sort of the center Give the whole thing a nice light coat and follow the direction of your branch lines. So making sure you don't go sort of horizontal because those lines don't contour to the same shape. Giving it a nice coat, and I'm then going to darken up sort of the base again and the right hand side of the branches, because our light source is beaming through in a second from the right, or from the left to the right. So let's darken this up a bit more, and there we go, we've got that tree in place. So if we go to our layers, we're actually done with all of those different effects. Now this is where we start to sort of bring in a couple of layer effects which will come to life and bring the sort of design together a bit more. So the first thing we're going to do is, we've got the tree on the right, its leaves up here. I'm done with my mask, so pinching a mask to a layer makes it permanent. So if we pinch this to this, we then have the main layer left, and we swipe it to the left and duplicate it. We're going to tap on the bottom one out the two, and our colour should still be set to this colour here, the middle colour on the far right. If we tap on the layer and fill it, then tap on the layer and turn off the alpha lock, we're then going to change its layer effect from normal to overlay. And we're going to go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur. If we zoom in, if I swipe from left to right, you slowly start to see that if I do it quite quickly in a couple of times, you'll see this tree really start to get like a darker shade underneath it. And it's also going to separate it a little bit, kind of like a drop shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and swipe from left to right, and somewhere about 15% will do the trick. And I tap on my adjustments when I'm done. And if you feel like it, you can go to the layer and swipe it to the left and duplicate it, which will make it even darker, and it will just sit nicely on top of this one here. We're going to do the same though on the left hand side. So if your layer count's starting to get a bit high, there is a couple of layers that you can pinch together. For example, this tree on the right and its leaves, you can pinch them all together if you wish to save on your layers. We're then going to go ahead and go down to the leaves that are on the left hand side tree. Pinch the mask to it, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, tap on it, and we're going to go to fill. We're going to tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Change its layer effect again from normal to overlay. And we're going to go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we're going to swipe from left to right. This will separate it from the background a little bit more. You can see if I undo that, if I swipe from left to right, for me, it just, bringing in that shadow, it just steps in front of everything even more. So I'm going to drop this one to about 18%, but just do a singular little bit of drop shadow there. So tap on my adjustments when I'm done. Now this is kind of a step that really, in my opinion, brings the whole thing together. It looks really, really smart, is bringing in the light rays that are going to come in. So you want to be here on this ground layer and create a new layer above it. We're going to go to our colors, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this color here. So it's the fourth color on the top row. We're going to go to our brush library and we're going to go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Now the brush size is currently set to 2%. Now that's very thin, but that's kind of alright to start with. Now our light source is up here, so we're going to draw in some nice straight lines. Now don't press too hard, but you're going to want to draw in a line and hold your pen down to create a nice line, like so. And that's kind of the angle we want to roll with. And then on different occasions, you can make your brush size a bit bigger. So I've gone from 2 to 4%, and I'm going to go ahead and draw in another line. And I'm going to draw it in till it lands here, because I want this to be my brightest spot in a second. So like this. And we're going to introduce a few more. So your light source is always from the same point as such. So it's literally here. So if I was to draw down like this, there we go. We've got another light ray coming through. I'm going to draw in another one, run through there. I'm going to reduce the brush size down to say 3% to make sure it's nice and random, and draw in another line that's going to go all the way across the design from left to right. And then I think we can just maybe add in a very light one from say here all the way across into the right hand side. So our light source is very much up in that left hand side there. So we're going to go to the layer, we're going to change its effect from normal to add. So this is where sort of your opacity and your sort of luminance of all your lines, shall I say, are a lot brighter than they were before. So we're just going to go to the layer effect, tap on add again, and just lower that opacity down. Now it's up to you depending on how hard you pressed. For example, I can get away with sort of maybe 50, but in my initial sketch of doing this, it was roughly around about sort of 30. So it depends on how much you've added in. But we want to then also go to our adjustments and Gaussian blur and swipe it from left to right. We don't want these lines to be too defined. We want them to be nice and soft. So I'm going to just make sure I move across to say about 10%, just to get rid of sort of those defined edges, if not slightly less, maybe about 8%. And then tap on my adjustments when I'm done. And then I can revisit my opacity by going back to the layer and just increasing it maybe just a little bit to say 60%. And then I've got some nice bright lines making its way through. Now we just need to make sure that these lights are actually reflecting onto the ground as such. So the beam's coming down, it needs to hit the ground. So we're going to go to our layers and we're going to go right to the top. Underneath our sort of stencil on the outside, we're going to create a new layer above that and change its layer effect from normal to add. Using the soft airbrush still, where our beams are coming down, I'm going to, in a circular motion, just build up some color in here. So that's where the light source is coming straight down. And if you need to, just go back to your layer and just increase the opacity up, just so that you can see where your lines were running in. So I know I've got a beam here, and on the layer that I should be at the very top, I need to add in a light patch here where the sun is beaming nicely down onto the ground, likewise here too. We've got a nice beam here, so I'm just going to introduce some color in behind that tree. And we've got a little bit of color coming across here. Now I'm just going to sort of expand on where it's hitting the ground on the left hand side and push that into the scene a bit more. And there we go, that looks awesome. We've got a nice little spotlight. So I'm going to go back to the layer for the beams and just lower that down to the 60% I had it before, if not slightly higher. And the layer we just made with the beams on the floor, we can just adjust that opacity. I'm going to drop it to 90. I quite like how bright they are. It merely makes everything sort of stand out from each other. We're then going to go to our layers and we're going to go down to the tree that's on the right hand side here. I've made a new layer above it. I'm going to tap on the layer and I'm going to clipping mask it. I'm going to change the layer effect on this layer to add, and with the same color and the same brush, we're just going to try and reflect that there is a bit more lighting. So I'm just going to sort of stroke underneath this underside here of this tree, just add in a little bit more color, maybe just a little bit up here as well, where sort of the lighting is making its way through. So just taking a tone off of that a little bit. And then I'm just going to brighten this area up on the tree. And again, just down here where the lighting is really hitting the tree, making it nice and bright on the ground. Just add in a little bit more to it. And then we'll repeat that for the tree on the left. So we're going to go to that layer and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it to it, and change its layer effect from normal to add. Now because the lighting is coming this way, you do have the option here to maybe add in a little bit of light, say up here on the branch, where a little bit of light's trickled onto that. And where this beam's coming down, we're just going to introduce some nice bit of lighting there, bottom left, where it's super bright and it's really definitely hitting that tree. We've got another bit of a beam here coming through, so yours may vary, but we're just going to add in a little bit of lighting on here, just where that beam's just coming through and it's just catching on the tree. Next, we just need to go up to our layers and we're going to create a new layer that's going to sit behind these trees. So we're going to add it just here, just behind the ground layer. So we created the ground layer, we're going to create a new layer and drag it underneath until it's in front of these trees. We're going to go to our colors and grab the green here, the sort of second color, top left of the palette, and using the soft airbrush again, about sort of 10% your brush size, very lightly just gloss from left to right, more so towards the bottom, just adding in a nice little gloss of color, which is just going to sort of haze out those trees in the background a bit more. And now the last few touches is just to do with the stencil at the top. So we're going to go right to the top of our layers and create a new layer and tap on it, and we're going to clipping mask it to the top layer. We're going to go to our colors and let's first of all grab sort of the redder tones. So I'm going to grab the far right color, top right, and we're going to go to our brush library and we're going to go down and we're going to find under the same brush we had before, under our organic, the snow gum. We're going to make the brush size nice and big, maxed out. We're going to go around in a circle, fill the whole screen in pretty much, leave a little sort of gaps here and there. Then go to your colors and grab, say, an orangey tone. So say the third color from the right, maybe reduce that down to say 65%. Circular motion, just build some color in like this and just layering on the sort of nice warm colors on top. You don't need to spend a lot of time on this, by the way. This is just like nice little filler content. Then go to your colors and grab the yellow here. So the fifth color from the right hand, or fifth color from the left, should I say, this color here. Circular motion, just layer this on top, adding in some nice color around the middle. And then just simply go to the layer and lower its opacity down. So we're just going to drop that all the way down. I'm going to drop it down to say 30%. So we've just got a nice little bit of something around the outside. And then we're going to go to the layer underneath it, so the actual stencil, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, go to your colors and grab this colour here, the middle colour on the far right column, and drag and drop it into the outside area, so just not in the centre. You'll see the layer is now changed. If we change its layer effect from normal, we change it to overlay. And if we go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we swipe from left to right, this is just going to bring in a nice little sort of vignette shadow around the outside. So I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to make it sort of roughly, let's just go again, let's go to about 16-17%. You can, if you want to, swipe that layer to the left and duplicate it if you really want to add a really nice burnt sort of shadow around the outside, but that's totally up to you. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave it with 2. I quite like that. And then if we pinch with 2 fingers, we get full screen with 4. We end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this autumn-based design. As always, be sure to share your designs with me over on Instagram. There's links to all my socials in the description down below. And if you didn't already know, I post exclusive tutorials every single month, but to my Patreon supporters. If you want to get 3 more exclusive tutorials and the full catalogue of the previous ones, hit the link in the description down below where you can get your name featured in videos, sneak peeks of upcoming designs, early access, and much, much more. So hit the link down below and come and show your support. And if you're interested in today's equipment list, as always, it's the Sketchboard Pro that you can always use code JOELCREATE to get yourself a nice 10% off. I'm currently still using the Ghost Paper screen cover by Upper, and today's grip and glove is by Pen Tips. Links to everything will be in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.